What's going on, everybody? Welcome once again to A Father's Voice Part 2. I'm Nate Holloway. I'm your host for tonight. And guys, we just thank you for joining us. This conversation that we're having um, is a conversation on racism and the father's impact on it, but it's mainly a conversation about fatherhood. So I wanted to get a group of guys from different backgrounds and different races to come on and talk about it. Guys, everybody's back tonight from the crew except PG. He couldn't be here tonight, but we got the guys here and we are going to talk. So I'm not going to hold it any much longer. We're going to get started. What's up, everybody?
What's
Hey,
going
hey.
on?
Hey, what's happening?
How you guys doing tonight?
The band
Doing
is back
well.
together.
The band is
Yes.
back together except Mando. Mando will be back on in a minute. He's probably getting in trouble, but we ain't gonna tell everybody
There
his
you go.
business. But guys, I thank you guys for doing this. Everybody who's watching, we thank you again for watching. But last time we talked about so many things about the impact of fatherhood on racism and what's going on in our climate today. It's just a great topic to talk about and teach our children because our children have questions. And no matter what age they are, and our children experience this at every age. I remember the first time my son had an experience with it when he was 4. And I don't know if I would say it was an experience with racism, but he came home. He was the only black kid in his class. And he said that because I used to have his hair cut short, he said the kids would pick with him because of his hair, because his hair was short. He looked different from them. And he was Daddy, why is my hair not long like my friends? And I had to explain to him that
Mm,
he's different
yeah.
and why his hair wasn't, but it hurt me because you know he wanted his hair to look like them because he was treated differently because of the way his hair looks. So, and I think a lot of our kids deal with that. And as fathers, we have to be able to talk to them and have this conversation and tell them the difference instead of telling them, oh, it's because you this, it's because you that, and they're this, they're that, because we sow seeds of discord when we do that. So, guys, tonight I'm not going to prolong it. We're going to get started. We got some questions. We got the guys. So, guys, we're going to go from left to right. I just want you guys to really quickly introduce yourself for those that are on for the first time, starting with Jimmy. Jimmy, just introduce yourself and tell us just a quick blurb about you, and then we're going to go on.
Sure. Hey guys, Jimmy Anderson here. Proud parent of two, to an 18-year-old daughter, Tori, and a 14-year-old son, Gabriel. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say happily married for 20 years to my beautiful wife, Diana Anderson.
Good. Ted.
Yeah, hey, Ted Bullard, father of 7, married for 21 years, and thrilled to be back.
Awesome.
This is Mando finally back. Go ahead, Mando.
Familia. So we're doing what?
Introduction.
You introduce yourself.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Brother Mondo. I'm your brother in Christ. See, my wife with 25 years. I got 3 kids, 20, 18, and 7-year-old. Excited to be here, and let's continue talking.
Awesome.
All right, Tony.
I'm Tony Garay, 39 years old, father to 1 little girl. She's 8 years old, Miss Ava, the princess of the house. Married for going on 14 years now in January. And Cuban American. My parents came early, about 2, 3 years old, from Cuba to New York to Miami. I was born and raised in Miami, a little town called Hialeah, which is basically Cuba number 2. So very grateful. I now bring that up because I now reside in Mooresville, North Carolina. A lot different than Cuba number 2, but that'll tie into some of our discussions and some of our questions and all that stuff about differences. So excited to share and excited to be with the band here.
John.
Hey, everybody. John Lofton. Been married going on, well, would it be 26 years in April. To my bride, Elaine, I have two daughters, 32 and 30, have three grandbabies, and just happy to be on here with you guys and all of you who are live streaming with us.
All right. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Nate Holloway, father of one, the prince of the house, Caleb Holloway. He's 5, and I'm the rookie husband on here. Me and my wife just celebrated our 7th year. So I'm
Amen.
the rookie. I plan on being what these guys are, but I'm working. So guys, we're gonna start. Let's get right in. Tony, you're up. You're up to bat first.
Let's
Let's
do
talk
it.
about. Can you talk about a time where Ava or your child experienced racism or treated someone different because of the color of their skin?
Woo! All right, that's a good one. So basically, like I was saying, we're Cuban and lived in Miami, where everywhere you go, restaurants, grocery stores, predominantly speaking Spanish, and it's just normal. About 3 years ago, we decided to move to Mooresville, North Carolina. At that time, my little girl was in kindergarten, but she had been at the same school since pre-K 2. So going on 3 years, we pulled her out halfway through kindergarten, and we put her in public school. She was in a private school down in Miami. Put her in a public school right off the bat here, and she started, I think, within like 2-3 weeks of us having moved here. Well, we put her in a school where there was a lot of diversity, thank God. But she was like the only Latino kid, and I can't really say that it was treated different in a racism sort of way. But obviously, she comes in with a strong accent, different looking, and questions came up. But the moment you asked that question, the first thing that came to mind was she never questioned whether people were treating her differently based on the color of her skin or the way she spoke or anything like that. It was more that she immediately picked up on like rudeness, right? So
Okay.
she's a very social girl. She treats people with respect. She gets along with everybody. She came from a school that she was in from pre-K 2 to kindergarten with the same group, and she was used to that. But here she comes, the new kid, and she was treated differently because she was that new kid. So the conversations I would have with her was, listen, Ava, you got to understand, and I didn't sugarcoat it for her. You came from a new school. You are a different breed. So you just have to work harder at winning over that crowd. Okay.
Mhm.
Relationships take effort, right? So we can't expect to go in there and be treated, the same as everybody else, regardless. Like, I'm short. I'm 5'4". I used to go to the basketball court, and what happened? I was treated like the short guy. You can either choose to say, man, I'm offended, right? I'm offended because they're calling me short and nobody wants to get me on that basketball team. Or you could leave me on the bench for the first half, but when I get on that court, I'm going to show you guys what I got, and nobody's going to outbeat my work ethic, and nobody's going to outbeat my game, and I'm going to give it all I got, and I'm going to prove myself on that court. It's the same thing I translate to my daughter. When you walk into a room that you know nobody, you have to put in maximum effort to win over that crowd. All right, because we're representing
Mhm.
God. We're representing Jesus. That's our Father. So regardless of how you get treated, regardless if you're disrespected or treated differently, you need to step up to that level. You need to win those people over and win those hearts. So not necessarily a racism type of thing, but just being treated different. Um, that's the first thing that comes to mind with that question, Nate.
That's good. That's good. I can. So as I was saying, when Caleb came home and he said that, I had to immediately shift and to start teaching him about his greatness and who he was.
Yes, sir.
And so what I did was I told him, I said, son, you are great. I said, if someone doesn't like you because of your hair, it's because they don't understand who you are. I say, you are a Holloway. I say, because of that, you have to just not worry about it. And I start to, so now I have a thing. I say, what do you say when someone says they don't like you or don't like your hair? He said, that's okay. And that's what I
Yeah.
told him. If someone says you they don't like something that you're doing, don't like your hair, just say that's okay, and then and go on about your business.
By the
And
way,
so and
I,
he,
I,
he does
I
that.
I said, by the way, I've seen his fades and
Are you
yours.
muted, Tony?
You guys some tight music.
I got music.
I said, you guys got some tight haircuts, man.
Oh, yeah, you know. That's
That's what I'm saying. I've seen Caleb's
Wise
fades.
the barber.
Yeah, there you go.
Short plug, Wise the barber, salon lost, Charlotte. But God, come on, guys, everybody else chime in. What do you guys have you ever had that experience with your children? What did you tell them?
I haven't. Same thing, Hispanic family here. Luckily, I haven't had a time where I have to discuss a race. But it's odd that in South Florida, everybody speaks of South Florida as this big old melting pot because Spanish is the primary language and you learn English later. But one thing about racism that I can't say has always existed in the Spanish community is we separate each other. We have a little prejudice as far as, the Puerto Ricans don't like the Cubans, the Argentinians don't like the Brazilians, so on and so forth. And, the Caribbean Latinos mock the Central and the Central American Latinos as, Indians. I mean, if anything, yeah, we're pure breed, but whatever. That's one thing I could say as far as racism. Never really experienced it outside of the Hispanic community. We do separate each other in that sense. But as far as our other race, blacks and whites, I've always been too black to be white and too white to be black type of thing. So growing up in New Orleans and, in the 15th Ward, there's only two lighter skinned family, some white family and my family, the Ocons. And, we had a quadruplex and, we lived in the projects. We live in the 15th Ward. And so for me, it's a little different. I do recall receiving the racial tension and the dislike because my skin was lighter than the blacks, majority. And, the blacks was the majority in my whole life. Blacks has always been majority. From New Orleans to Coconut Grove, South Florida. I've always been the minority, and blacks have always been the majority in my life. So I've got that prejudice towards me. But one thing about us Hispanics, man, we come to work, we build America. Go out and see who's doing the construction is us. Who's out there doing the slavery work, the picking the cottons, the picking the food. It's us. So
but you said something key, though. You said something key when you were talking, and you said in your neighborhood it was Hispanics against the Cubans, but you said you're all from the same blood. Mm-hmm. That's right there. It amazes me that you're all from the same nationality, but you're being racist toward each other. How do you handle that? How did you handle that?
Yes. So for that, I just keep going. Now as an adult, I could, in hindsight, playing Monday quarterback, I could see that was a problem in the Hispanic community. But at the moment, you just keep it going, and then sooner or later you start befriending the Cubans like Tony's and I'm Nika and wait, what is this Nika and this Cuban? We don't like Nikas. We don't get. And then you got Mondos and Tony hanging out, and then we got a Puerto Rican that's cool, and then we got Dominican that's cool, and then all suddenly, wow, we're Hispanic, and why are we beefing with each other?
So what if everybody did that? What if fathers taught all of their children, our children that everybody, if white people did that and black people did that and Hispanic people did that and Asian people did that, and we came together and not because worried about the color of our skin, but we came together because we're people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What would that do to society?
It's very
imagine
if we just get we turn off the TV, we turn off social media, and we start building communities and socializing with each other one-on-one, you'll see how quickly that happens. You know?
Yeah.
Start with your neighbor. Start with your neighbor.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
If you got
Yeah,
a problem with your neighbor, you're not gonna fix nothing by voting if you can't have a potluck in your block.
Right.
100%.
Right.
Yeah, and I think just to chime in a little bit here, the fact that I think there's measures of that going on, no matter what your skin tone or your culture is or your ethnicity is. Even growing up in the hood where I grew up in an under-resourced area, and we had the propensity of treating each other differently based on, you had the pretty Rickies, which were the light-skinned brothers, and were separated from the dark chocolates, and then I was somewhere in the middle. So, I think all races have that going on in their communities. And I think if we can stop a lot of the infighting, then we can deal with the outfighting. Like
thank
you
you.
were saying, if
I'm writing
we
it down.
just, as fathers, if we can just learn how to teach our children culture rather than color, culture meaning have moral values about yourself, treating people, just with dignity. But also the bigger thing is making sure you get a good education, understanding why it's important to understand credit, understand money,
Yes.
teaching your children values that's going to help them to succeed. Then it doesn't matter what anybody else says about them, and it wouldn't matter what their skin tone was. If they were getting a education, then nothing can stop them from being successful. So,
Right.
and you think you just have to, like us, I know I made a lot of the wrong decisions when I grew up because of the nature of the hood I was in. I was told certain things, to feel certain ways about people because they were evil people, bad people. They didn't have anything good for us until I actually got in the military and I understood people are just people. Right. There's two things I've learned: that there are no atheists or racists in a foxhole.
Amen.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's good.
There are no
Amen.
atheists or racists in a foxhole. When bullets are flying, we love each other because we got to
100%.
take care of one another. Well, I'm just saying we are in a spiritual fight right now, guys.
Yes, we are.
This is a spiritual battle that we're fighting, and we shouldn't have any racism or any atheistic beliefs about ourselves. We should love each other because we need to protect each other in this fight, because
Agreed.
the devil wants to kill all of us, and he doesn't discriminate.
Agreed.
Doesn't discriminate.
Yep.
Does not discriminate, and that's key. He wants to, and I'm glad you said that, John, because that's one thing I was talking to a friend about today. That's what the devil wants to do. He wants to separate us. He wants to divide us, because if we're divided, we can't conquer him.
Right.
But if we come together, we can come with a strategy and change. Like, we can change neighborhoods. We could change our kids. We could change things that happen in government. We could change things that happen in society when we come together. But when we're divided and we're separated and we're coming against each other, Christians coming against each other over political party, over who I vote for, over the color of our skin, then our children are seeing that.
Yep.
And then our children they're like, well, if that's what daddy did, that's what daddy said, that's what mommy said. If I sat there, and one night Caleb asked me, he said, "Daddy, do you like Donald Trump?" And I was like, I love him with the love of Jesus, son. He said, "Daddy, do you like Donald Trump?" I say, I think he said, "Daddy, you love Donald Trump?" I said, I love him with the love of Jesus, son. He said, "Daddy," I said, "So why you asking me that?" I said, "Are you learning about the president in school?" He said, "Yes." And then he went on about his business. But I dodged the question, which that's my fault. I should have went further with him. But if I had have trashed the president to him, if I had talked about racist stuff, or if I had talked about the racism of the president to him, then he'd have probably gone to school and said something like that. My daddy said he's a racist. My daddy said this. My daddy said that. But I averted the conversation because I didn't really know what to say. And I can be honest, sometimes as fathers, we're not honest and say that we don't know what to say. Now, I didn't know what to say there, so I diverted the conversation to something else. And when he went back to playing, I was happy because I didn't have to have that conversation.
Yep.
But that's the thing. We shy away. And Tony, you said it before in the last one that we shy away from the conversation that we need to have.
Yeah, but like
And
you did, you diverted at that time because you weren't ready, right? But it's never
Right.
too late. It's never too late. Now you can go back, right? You're prepared now. Now you go back and you say, "Hey, Caleb, remember, a month ago that you asked me this question? I had some time to think about it now, and I should have been more mature, and I should have answered you in this way." Okay. And then you tell him the honest truth that he's going to learn how vulnerability and being a man from his father. Wow, my father, my hero, said that he was wrong and he didn't have the right answer at that time. He
Right.
gathered himself, he gathered his thoughts, he did research, and now he came back to answer me in a very educated way. That speaks more than anything you could have ever answered at the moment in the wrong way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's okay
Right.
to not have all the answers, man.
It
You
is.
know what I'm saying? It's 100% okay to not have all the answers. The answer is being completely honest and telling our kids up front, or people we mentor, or friends and coworkers. If they ask your political opinion, if they ask you, you know what? Quite frankly, I don't know enough about the subject to honestly answer. I can tell you how I personally feel about it, but it's
Right.
not a very educated
Right.
decision or an answer. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's
I like
okay,
that,
man.
Tony.
Like
Go ahead, Nate.
the word that came when you were speaking of that, Nate, was exposure, right? We are allowing ourselves to be exposed by all the drama going on in our lives, right? And if
Yeah.
we can stand firm, not waver, and be who we are during the storm, that is what speaks volumes. You know what I'm saying? Don't waver who you are. If you're a good person, a good-hearted person, it doesn't matter if you believe in a different candidate, if you believe, if you have points of view about racism, like what's in here cannot waver. If you love people, regardless of the color of their skin, regardless of anything, you just love. You know what I'm saying? Love.
Yeah.
There's people who want to force you to say certain things and force you to say certain slogans that are out there. Like, we're not. You're not going to force me to say anything. You know what I'm saying? You're not going to force me to say
Yeah.
anything. But I promise you that if you see me in the grocery store, if you see me on vacation, if you see me in my sleep, if you see me treating my family, if you see me hanging out with my friends, you'll see the same human being each and every single day for the last 20 years of my life. Now, going back before those 20 years, I could say you saw a totally different human being.
Right.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I'm 100% okay with that, because there's still people that'll bring it up and say, "Oh yeah, you think you're all all holy and this and that now? How about back then?" And I'm like, "No, actually, you know what? You're right. That's what made me who I am today." You know what I'm
Tony
saying?
BC.
That's exactly.
Yeah, and-
That's
and-
what made me who I am today.
Yeah, and I can say that because you are that type of person. Funny story. I was showing my wife something on Instagram. You out there passing out donuts to people you don't even know. Just doing donuts for everybody. And so, but that's the person you are.
Yeah.
And I've seen you did that with me when we met, and I've seen you do that, and you're a great example of that. But that's a perfect segue into the next question. Jimmy, this question is for you.
Yep.
How important are a father's words when it comes to racism?
I think the word says, train up a child in the way they should go. And when they grow old, they won't depart from it. So to me, a father's words are the most important things that they'll ever hear, because the Heavenly Father's words that we hear are the most important that we can hear spiritually. So in the natural, it's the same thing. It's this, how important, what I tell my children, the last question, I just want to refer back to that quickly. My daughter, when she was started dating, she's 18 now, but in that 15, 16, 17-year-old, even now 18, a couple of times she brought over a black boy to the house. And people within my own family says, well, how do you feel about that? Isn't that weird that why is she bringing a black boy to your house? And I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
I teach my children, whether my son or daughter, that we love everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And if she is attracted to someone that's black, I support her wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
And we've instilled that in my children since they were born. My son Gabriel hasn't really experienced, to my knowledge, any racism. So he's taken what we've taught him and ran with it. And his best friend today is Tay Martavius on his basketball team. They're best friends. They hang out. He's at the park right now in Ocean Isle playing basketball with his best friend who's black, because I don't teach him anything else, where maybe even within my own family, people were saying, well, no, you need to hang out with those that act like you, look like you, talk like you, have the same financial statuses as you. And we break all of those barriers. I don't want my children to hang around some middle-aged white person that works for corporate America. That's not what I want. I want my kids to hang out with those that are living in single wide trailers, or those that have an oceanfront house. And I say that because even in my lifetime, it's almost like you have to, and it's been taught to me. So I've broken a lot of that to where you don't have to hang out with everyone that's just like you. I actually want you to expand out, and this is what I tell my kids, and talk to everyone, regardless of culture, background, history, ethnicity, religion, because when you do get a job and you do work for corporate America or wherever, you're going to have to work hand in hand with people that don't believe like you, don't talk like you, don't act like you, aren't on the same pay scale as you. So truly, the Father's words, when they're spoken at a young age, will hold so much value as that child, he or she, as they become older and develop into their adolescence, into their teenage years. And then, where I'm facing today as an 18-year-old who's packing up her room and preparing her mom and I that she's going to move out. So we have to have the faith to know, hey, you know what? We've taught her. She knows that she can go out and have pizza with someone from Cuba, from Mexico, from Puerto Rico, from New Orleans, from Miami, or from Africa. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Because that's what we actually want from her. I don't want her to be put into a box or a narrow window to where she has to be with just a specific group. And I think we need to break the barriers of where we've allowed ourselves to align. And it starts with us as fathers of how we raise our children. And I think racism is fed upon because of the lack of the presence of fathers.
That's good.
Hey, Jimmy,
Sure,
I'd like to stir the pot.
I love it when you do.
Any of your family members that you mentioned that had an issue, seemingly, if they had a preference for Caucasian versus Black or Cuban or whatever else, is that racist?
I think it's a lead into racist. Yeah, I think it's a lead into racism because you're putting a standard that I think is cultural and more of how we were raised rather than how we really should see people.
That's that's a very common thing, right? We don't like to say this out loud.
I love it.
Real,
Ted.
remember?
Yes,
that's real.
100.
But 100. This is the truth. This is the truth. When it's just us with our family or friends, let's put the pretenses off for a second. That's the conversation that we have is, but do you prefer, like, John, I hear you, but do you prefer your daughter to date or marry a white guy? I'm not asking, are you against it? That's different. Like, I'm not against certain foods.
I can tell you what I prefer for my daughter who's 18 and is dating. I prefer her to date or marry someone that is completely in tune with the things of God.
Yeah.
Take care of her. That's going that's going to open her door.
Thank you.
That's going to buy her meal. That's going to agree
Pray
upon
over her.
the word. That's
Pray over her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me just say one more.
I like that, Ted.
Thank you. I was trying to lead you as much as. Listen, this is what I've taught my kids their entire life is first and foremost, I once you get married, I'm nowhere in that equation, right? You marry who God puts in your life and who you believe, are they God-fearing? Are they living the principles of Christ? Do they share your culture, whatever that is, right? Culture, not race. That's one of my biggest pet peeves that people harp on. Are there cultural differences? Sure. But let's make sure we're speaking the same language here. What I've always said is I prefer that you marry the person that you truly believe is the person that God put on this planet for you.
Yep.
That's not for me to decide, whatever that race is. But if I were to say, listen, would I prefer you to marry a white guy because of stigmas or because of cultural differences? That's a debate that we've had many times in this house. Is that a racist statement? Because one of my employees, one of my son's good friends from school, black guy that we've had many, many conversations about this with. And he was like, look, my mom will tell you straight up, she does not like me dating white girls.
Yeah.
And he's like, but she can say that and get away with it. That's not considered racist. He's like, but you have to be careful saying that. And I was like, you're right. Because if I say it, it's immediately perceived as, oh, you're against blacks. And I was like, trust me, I get it. That is another issue that I think we have to, as fathers, overcome. Nate, is that it's okay to be for something. It doesn't mean you're against this.
Yes.
Right? To me, this is what I think Christ did obviously better than anyone is teach balance. Everything in life has got to be balanced. And because you're for this does not mean you're automatically against this. Use common sense. Discern. You know, that's a word we don't hear much in church these days. John, I'm sure you talk about it often. I can't wait to visit your church. But discernment, where is that? You know, we're supposed to test the spirit.
Yeah.
So anyway,
And I think
let me chime in a little bit here. And I think we all have some aspects of that, in our families, especially in the Black community. I know, and I can speak from that because I'm Black. So, and you have family members or friends who will have, certain feelings towards white people. You hear terms that are spoken sometimes privately. But what I've learned, though, and this is what I taught my girls, is corrupt practices are the fruit of corrupt principles. And so when you have corrupt practices in your house, i.e. you got biases going on in your house, people know that you have them, and it's the fruit of corrupt principles. So your children are going to imitate the father. You talking, oh, that white boy, them white people don't, or how the Mexicans are. Well, you just don't realize, just making that little quick statement, it's a seed. Seeds grow into your children. No one is born a racist. Racism is taught. Nobody is born, or kids do not know the difference between colors. They don't care. They just want to play. If you don't, they're going to take toys from you. They don't care if you're Black or white, Hispanic. They're going to take that toy because they're selfish. All of them are selfish, right? But it's taught. It's something that they've heard. Parents have created these biases inside of them to feel a certain way about a certain group of people. And it is the responsibility of the father to make sure. And here's the kicker here: when you have a father who does not know the Lord, and so they feel like it's important that I teach more about my Blackness than about culture, than about morality, than about values, than about getting a quality education. And so when you do that, then of course you don't create a warrior, you create a weakling, because you create a victimizing type of attitude, because now it's like, oh man, I can't do things that I really want to do because somebody's always going to stop me. Right. I can't do what I want to do because the white man going to always keep me down. Well, no, again, getting back to understanding the quality of the education, morals, values, and things of that nature. No matter where you go, there are people that's not going to like you. Right. But if you know how to speak, if you know how to carry yourself, you're savvy about your education, then you can be very successful regardless of your skin tone, your background. And let me just say this last thing, because how in the world can people come from other cultures? Let's just take this real basic here, just talking about Black people. how can other people come from other cultures? They will live together for 10 years.
Yes.
Put all their money together. They will create a business. They all will work that business until it's a success, and then they start another business. Well, we're already here in America. Why haven't we done that in the Black community? Why are we so busy tearing each other down? Right. And listen, if we're tearing each other down, then we can't really speak against other people tearing us down.
Yeah.
Right. So we gotta, first of all, we gotta love each other. We gotta love our own race and our own culture. We got to put these values in our own race and in our own culture. We got to believe in each other. We got to patronize all of their businesses and stuff like that when we get an opportunity to, and support people. You see, if people want to start a business, I think we need to be more of a support for them rather than saying, oh, you can't do that, or, it's going to fail. And so I think all of these things are just critical conversations that we need to have. But I don't speak for the Black community. Let me just say that first and foremost. I do not speak for the Black community. I know that I will never have the answers to these complex questions and the issues of race. But I'm just glad that we're at least having the discussion about it, and we can do it in a civil way without beating each other up about it.
Yes, and I love that. And you guys were talking. I love the question, Ted. I love how you stirred the pot up a little bit, because I never ever thought about that. Because like Keisha and I, we talk and we're like, whoever Caleb wants to marry, we don't care what the race is, and that's our conversation. We like whoever he wants to marry, as long as she loves God and loves him, and is an example of the traits of who. Look at mommy. I tell him, look at mommy, and see, when he had a conversation with me, and he said, "Daddy, what's a wife?" And I said, "Wife is what mommy is. Is what mommy is to daddy. So, daddy, when I grow up, am I gonna have a wife?" I'm like, "Sure, son, you'll have a wife when you grow up." And he said, "Daddy, you know what? I think I want mommy to be my wife." I said, "No, mommy can't be your wife, but look for somebody who has the qualities that mommy has." And when you guys are talking about that, about how we talk, I realized that it's exposure.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason, as far as like the fathers getting exposed, I was talking to someone one day. They were asking me, when I told somebody where I came from, where I grew up, and that my neighborhood was on 48 hours one year for one of the worst neighborhoods on the East Coast. They couldn't believe it. And it was like, well, how did you get out? I said, because I was exposed outside of the hood. See, I was in the hood. I lived in the hood. My godfather was my pastor at the time. Came to me. He was a father to me. He took me out of the hood, exposed me to things away, exposed me to business. I didn't come back home until it was 10 o'clock at night, till it was time to go to bed. So I didn't see the things that went on. I knew what went on, but I wasn't involved. I didn't have an opportunity to get involved in the things that went on, because I was exposed. And when I was exposed outside, the words that I heard weren't words of racism, weren't words of victimization, weren't words of the white man is this, the white man is that, your blackness is this, your blackness is that. It was, you can do this, you can do that. Your character means this, your character. So the words of my godfather, who I call my father, was what took me outside of the hood and changed my bias. Because if I had still been there, I'd have probably been feeling the same way. I'd probably still be there. I wouldn't have the family I have now. And I'd probably be thinking, well, the black man, the white man, this, the white man, that, and those things. When Pastor John, you made a good point, is that we can't focus on what the white man did if we're not doing anything to change our circumstance. And our children hear that. Our children hear saying this. They go to school and they look at their white friends and they're like, you holding me back. Or they grow up and they think about that. So then we're undivided, because we can't come together and, like you said, build a community, build a business together, because we're so thinking, oh, well, they're going to hold me back. And I love that point, and we got to change that. We got Ted. I love you. You're famous for stirring up the pot, and I love that. But so we're going to go to the next question, which is for Mando. Mando, what's
free,
one?
man.
On time.
Huh? You
Back
good?
on time.
Back on cue.
Right on time. He shows up. Right when it's the question.
So, Mando, what's one way you can think about?
Wait, Nate.
Go ahead, Tony.
I was just gonna say really quick before you go to the next question. I wanted to stir the pot a little bit, like
We stirring the
piggybacking on
pot
Ted.
tonight.
So we're talking about the words, right, and not being the victim mentality, right? So here's something that strikes me, right? I grew up on hip hop, right? Hip hop guided me to make it out of the hood, to work hard, to hustle, right? Like nobody's gonna come to your rescue. You got to go out, you got to get it yourself. Like I grew up on hip hop, putting these headphones on and letting it like literally preach to me to build up who I was. That's where I learned my hustle. That's who I learned how to be. Tupac was like my idol at the time. Like I would listen to Tupac, super brilliant guy, right? Which people who don't know who Tupac, they're like, oh, that's just a guy from the hood. No, this guy is genius, right? So I grew up, I used to study his lyrics and he helped me get to where I am today. I still owe a lot of that to that music. So my question is, if these hip hop artists, even the ones from today, are preaching this message of build your own dream, hustle, have the nice clothes, have the nice cars, all this stuff there, but yet when it comes to politics, okay, they're preaching that all of this stuff over here is not going to help you. You need to vote for the Democratic Party. You need to vote for this party. You need to change this rule. Like, we don't got to change anything. You got to change your heart and your mindset. Period, regardless of who's in office. So, people idolize and listen to these people. They have 2, 3, 4, even 10 million followers on social media. Okay. And they're not preaching verbally what they're preaching in their music. Because if they were to go into the hood and to, other neighborhoods and preach this and tell people, hey, listen, just like I say in my music, it's on you. It is not on anybody else. It is not on any politician. It is not on any teacher. It's not even up to your parents. I get that your dad didn't raise you right. I understand that. But now what? Now what? Now you're 28 years old. You're 25. You're 18. Now what? Are you still going to cry about it? Now you got to put your big boy pants on. You got to go forward. So.
Right. Well, let me chime in on that because I'm a little older. I'm a little older than you guys. So, I grew up before it was hip hop. It was more the gangster stuff. So, but you also have to ask yourself, on no matter what genre of music it is, you got to ask yourself, what is the spirit behind it? Right? Because all music has a spirit behind it. So yeah, you got good things out of the lyrics and you learn from it, but what was the spirit? So we can't have an expectation of people who have a wrong spirit to make right choices for everybody else. So, it's a hustle. And I believe creatively you can pull some great things out of different lyrics, out of the lives of people who actually made bad choices. You can pull some good things out of it. But I think as we're talking about a father's authority and the importance of having a father in the house, but we also have to see also the detriment and when a father's not in the house, right? Which is one of the things that in the Black community, which is more of a detriment than anything to me that I've seen on record. If you look at the statistics, is the lack of fathers in the house, which is important to make sure that we can have that foundation, right? So the right father in the house, you might take some of that hip hop music, but then he can guide you in a way to say, hey, okay, so don't go down this path, even though you can take some of this good stuff that you've learned about. I like the fact that, work hard, having a good work ethic, but also having a good work ethic and working hard and having discernment helps you make better choices, not going to sleep with every woman that you see. Don't make sure you put a value on your seed. See, that comes from a father, right? Fathers do that. Fathers have to teach their sons, your seed is valuable. You just can't be planting your seed in everything. Where you place your seed is important, because wherever that seed is, you got to take care of it, because that's the responsibility of a father, right? So I think as we're talking and understanding the importance of a father, then we know that the lack of purpose will inevitably lead to abuse.
That's good.
See, in any area that you don't understand purpose, it leads to abuse. even our sexual prowess, it leads to abuse because we don't understand that the main purpose was for your wife, not for your creep, your Friday night step out, and when we don't teach those values in our sons, or we don't teach those values in our daughters, then it leads to abuse, God. It leads to sexual lust. It leads to drinking, drugs, all of those things. But it takes a father to come in and make sure that they understand that their purpose before they understand their color. Does that make sense?
Good.
Right. And,
Yes.
and out of that understanding, they know that they can do all things through Christ that strengthens them. Then they understand that nobody is going to keep them down but themselves. Even the devil can't stop you when you're in God.
Yep.
Right. That makes sense, guys.
100%.
Yes, it totally says that's right. And
I
so,
think
and I like, go ahead.
Tony is the exception, because I don't know about you, but I don't want my two kids to be raised or influenced by anybody else but their mom and I, and other spiritual leaders, because hip hop today, I don't want them to listen to any of those lyrics and say, oh yeah, I need to get that hustle, loyalty, and respect, and have that chip on their shoulder. I would rather them have a love of the Father into them, and be raised that way rather than today's cultural music.
And that's great. And that's great.
Funny,
but
go ahead, Don.
but when you look at the hood, there is no
Yes,
father,
sir.
right?
Yes, sir.
So
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. When there's such an absence of it, we tend to latch on to whatever we understand. Right.
Yep.
And we're just trying to get it. Like I said, when I grew up, it was NWA. I'm not going to say the word here. It was live. Don't got children on the line. It was Eazy-E. It was Cube. In those younger years, you definitely didn't want to have your kids listen to that kind of music. You know what I'm saying? It was gangsta. It wasn't gangster. It was gangsta. So, but that's what we connected to, because sometimes even the father was in the house, but he wasn't in our lives. Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean that the fathers are absent. They might be in the house. Even today, we have to be careful as dads that we don't put all our time in our business, in the church, or our activities. That, we have a presence in the house, but we don't have a presence in our children's lives.
Correct.
And so we have to understand and take those things, Tony, like you're saying, okay, if a father wasn't around, then I need to know how to be a father that is going to be around. Right. Take all the experiences, everything that I learned from hip hop, everything I learned from my mentors and all the other people who was in my life. And then even though I never saw one before, I can be one. I can learn how to be a good dad.
Yes. And I understand where Tony's coming from, because I grew up that way. I grew up with NWA, Tupac, Biggie. Tupac and Biggie, I was in college around the time frame, but mine was Run DMC, NWA, Snoop Dogg, and I understand when you don't have a father to tell you how to hustle and how to hustle right, how to be a business person, you can get soaked into that music that they're telling you what to do, and they're telling you how to do it because you relate, because you're in the hood and you're in that environment. You can relate to how they're saying it, so you can figure out how to make that work, what they're saying, because that's the environment that you're in. And that's where fathers come into play, whether it's a father figure, whether it's an uncle, whether it's a godfather. That's where that comes into play to help us do that. And we gotta, and that's what fathers gotta do. And Pastor John, when you were talking about the presence, about fathers being in the house but not present. Some people have their fathers there, but they're not present. Just like tonight, I love how you say it's important that we put everything else aside for our children. When I got home, my only thing that was on my mind was getting in the house, eating, changing clothes, getting ready for this.
Right.
As soon as I walked through the door, Kate was like, "Daddy, can we go outside?" I said, "No, son. Daddy's got to get ready for his interview night. Please, Daddy, please." I said, "No." Then I heard in my spirit, just give him 30 minutes.
Yes.
And I said, "Okay, buddy, Daddy give you 15 minutes." I said 15. Ended up being 30. I said, "But Daddy give you 15 minutes." He was like, "Okay." He put his shoes on. He went outside. All he wanted was for me to go outside and play with him for a few minutes because he hadn't seen me all day. Now, if I had said no, because Dad's got to get ready for his interview for his Facebook Live tonight, that would have hurt him.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because I didn't give him any time. And so, because I made a conscious effort to give him 30 minutes of my time, because I didn't have to be on to 7:30. I could eat, or I could have waited to afterward to eat. But he got my time. I had time to eat and get ready. And that's what we have to do, especially for fathers who are in the house. If you just give them a little bit of time, that can influence our kids. So we're going to segue, Mando. What is one way you think you could teach your children to connect with people who have different views about race?
Wow, great question. Kind of goes close hand in hand to what's going on in my household right now. We just moved up from Miami 6 months ago, and goes hand in hand because how do I teach my 7-year-old how to connect and start making friends and start fitting in? You know, he's the outsider. Earlier he asked me, hey, Pop, we got an accent from Florida, right? So where you get that? Why you say that? Because my friends say that because I say bruh a lot. I say bruh. so
Like we said, it comes from the father.
Yeah. So you know, and in that dialogue, I had to have with him from the words we use and how I said, well, who likes the way you speak? He goes, well, and he starts naming people. You know, they think it's cool, and now they're using certain words. All right, cool. What words have you heard that they use? And all right, cool. And so now I'm helping him guide that conversation, navigate through because it could easily turn to mocking him because of his Southern words and following the father, and it could easily turn to that. But I started asking, well, who's cool with who likes it? Oh, and there's this boy, his friend Bradley, and they're into beatboxing. You guys were talking about earlier old school hip hop. My son is into beatboxing. He's 7 years old, So him and his friend, and they have beatbox battles and whatnot. So I started asking, well, who likes beatboxing? And he starts naming people. Well, who likes, and I start naming the things I know he likes. So, well, who likes this? And we'll talk to him about that. And who likes that? So all his characteristics, all the things he likes, I start asking him, well, who likes this? Regardless of race, color, culture, who likes this? And he gives me a couple of names. Talk to them about that and get in there. Who likes this? He only likes to eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Who else likes to eat only peanut butter and jelly sandwiches? We'll talk to them about peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Beatboxing, talk to them, and so on and so forth. Next thing you know, now I'm helping them navigate how to, forget race, color, culture, where they come from. Who likes this? And that's how you get in there. It's kind of something like what Jesus did. He came to meet us where we're at, not to leave us there, but he came to meet us where we're at. So to make this connection with us and say, I get you. I understand. I'm here because I get you. Now, let me help navigate this for you and where I want you to be, where I need you to be, where you will be more successful, where I created you to be. So it's really comes down to that, just live a Christ-like style. Well, how is that? In times that I don't want to do certain things, in the back of the head, what would Jesus do? That used to be such a cool bracelet. No one uses it anymore. But what would Jesus do? And try to, live that Christ-like. And when you're tired and when you don't want to, it's like, what would Jesus do right now? He will make an attempt to reach out to me. So I think watching me in my neighborhood, this is a great neighborhood. We got a Muslims family. We got white across the street. I got 2 black neighbors. I got a family from Turkey behind me, and seeing how I interact with my neighbors, overlooking the fact that why is this lady covering her head from top to bottom? He has no time to think about it when I'm just waving hi and talking to her husband. He's like, hey, my dad is cool with that person covering her head. Hey, they have a different accent. They're from Turkey, but my dad is conversing with them. Hey, they got different skin color, but my dad is. So it's what do they see us doing? They're going to mimic that. They're going to mimic that. As soon as somebody says, you know what? You're Chico, you should stay with Chico. You're black, you should stay with black. You're white. The father's voice was saying, no, hold up. Everybody loved my father. Whites, black, Hispanic, Muslim, they loved him. So why am I going to listen to what you're telling me, social media, friends, than what I saw my father do? And everybody loved my father. The father's voice.
That's good. That's good. And that's important. Father's example. So, Ted, why is it important to have this conversation with our children?
It's not.
It's not?
Unless you have to. No, it's not. And I'll tell you why. Because the minute you start to talk about race, it's all about race. Right? I strongly disagree with a lot of what I'm seeing that's out there, that you have to have these proactive conversations with your children. And by the way, this is my opinion. You guys are welcome to dogpile on me. But I'm going to tell you, the minute that let me say it another way. If you've ever seen the movie The Village, right? Have you ever seen that movie, Nate?
I've never seen it.
John, have you ever seen it? Is it because you're black? No, I'm just kidding.
Probably.
What's up with that, guys? Great movie. You got to watch this movie. Without giving it away, the premise is fascinating because the adults in this community control the perception of the children, and because of that, the children, I'm not going to give it all away, but the children behave in a way that they've been taught to. Right? I can control my kids' perception of the world with one conversation. I could completely, fundamentally change their worldview in so many ways. And the same thing with race, by having one conversation. And it starts with me pointing out those differences. It's different if your child comes home and says, hey, Dad, what does that mean? That's why I said it's not unless you have to. The minute my child comes to me and says, hey, I've got a question for you, and it's about that, sure, let's talk about it. But I'm not going to proactively have some of these conversations that, by the way, you in particular, John, Nate, you may have a different perspective because you may say, well, there's the driving while black conversation that we have to have with our kids. I would love to debate that one as well. Is that true? You may say it is. I may say, okay, maybe you do get pulled over. And is it because you're black? Maybe in a nice car, maybe not a nice car. I don't know. I'm not black, so I haven't had that. I've been pulled over quite a few times. I couldn't blame it on my skin color. Now, you could say, yeah, but I was black. The cop was hostile towards me. So again, the employee I just mentioned a minute ago, we just had this conversation and he said, man, I've been pulled over like 4 times. Granted, I'm a terrible driver. He said, but I've never had any issues. He loves cops. He's this diehard Trump supporter. He's like, I've never had an issue because I do what they tell me to do. So without stirring the pot too much and having a whole other conversation, I'm just telling you, Nate, you asked me, right? So that's my answer. My answer
I want you to answer.
Guys, I don't have some of these conversations because I think the minute you have them, your kids' perception become locked in on those things. Yeah. And I don't want my kids to view the world in that lens. I want them to see the world the way I was raised, which is my parents didn't have those conversations with me. I came home and asked certain questions, and they said, okay, well, son, here's the deal. He said that out of ignorance. Some people are just stupid. Some people are based on their biases, based on the way their parents raised them, but we didn't raise you that way. That is not how we view the world. And that is how I've raised my kids.
And I see what you're saying, and I love how you come with your own opinion. That's your opinion, and I love it. And I can say that the reason that we do that is to be proactive.
I understand.
It's because of what's going on, because I have experienced it. To this day, all I did was look over and look in a car full of undercover cops. Then I know they're undercover cops. To this day, I would not, if a cop pull up beside me, I would not look over in the car. because of what happened to me. I will not. If a cop stopped me, I'm hands out the window, ready because of experience. So a lot of black fathers do that and black parents do that because of when we see what's going on and a lot of times because of experience. I do understand what you're saying about why would we put that in our kids' mind, but let them come to us. But a lot of times we don't want to, I honestly don't want Caleb, which I know I'm not going to speak it that he will experience it, but I know there's a chance. So I'd rather him be prepared to experience it than experience it and come home petrified. Daddy, this happened to me. We have a friend whose son was pulled over by the police and found out it was a nice police officer, but the kid was so petrified that he was shaking all the way home because he thought he wasn't going to make it home that night. So it for us, I know this for me, it's about as a father being proactive to let my son know, son, you can experience this. So let daddy prepare you for that.
Let me throw this
in right here.
That's exactly what anxiety is, though.
Yeah.
That's what anxiety is. Let me prepare myself, my family, my mind, in case, God forbid, I get into a car accident, in case, God forbid, I lose my job, right? And people live in anxiety and they take drugs to stop the anxiety, right? So what you're saying sort of is you're putting the cart before the horse, right? I'm going to prepare him so that if this happens to him, but we learn from bumping our heads against a wall. So it could be counterproductive. You can teach that lesson, which we know very, very well that our kids do not listen to everything we say, right? They're going to learn by bumping their heads. If you tell them, hey, don't put your hand on that fire, it's hot, they're going to put their hand on that fire one day and they're going to learn from that. So I get it from your perspective that it's out there and you want to prepare them for that. But, my dad taught me the same way. Like, my dad worked with a lot of people from the South, right? And I used to hear his conversations, and he was Hispanic, and he has an accent, but he was in corporate America. He's been with AT&T for 40 years. And I used to see the way he got treated, all right? These people would, first of all, he only had the high school education, dropped out, got his GED. All his peers were masters and all that stuff. My dad climbed the corporate ladder, and it was not easy. He had to go and prove himself constantly. They constantly denied him. They never gave him the benefit of the doubt. But my dad never said, hey, this is going to happen to you. Okay, you're Latino, you got to prepare yourself. No, he said, you better hustle triple as hard as these other people are going to do it. So on the contrary, when you're going to get pulled over for a cop and you're black, okay, you got to work triple as hard to prove who you are as a human being. Okay, you're going to prove to that cop who your heart is right off the bat. And like Nate, you said you put your hands out right away. So do I. Immediately. Right?
But isn't that still preparation though? Isn't that still being proactive?
Right.
And
let me finish. I learned that because I was a police explorer, right? So I learned what the cops were teaching to police officers, right? I was training to be a police officer, and they were taught when you talk to people out there, you get pulled over, you put your hands up, you respect. Why? Because the cops are intimidated as well. They don't know when they're walking up to this vehicle who they're pulling over. You know what I'm saying? So they're also prepared. So it's a two-way story. All right, we're teaching our kids and our young black kids, be careful, and the cops are being trained to be careful. Okay, so the argument goes both ways.
Let me chime in a little bit here. And let me just say this first. I don't have an expectation that any one of you will understand how it feels from my viewpoint. I don't have that expectation. There's no way you can understand it. I grew up in the deep South. I grew up around rednecks. I've been run over. I've had rednecks try to run me off the road. I've had rednecks to shine hunting lights in my car in the middle of the night. I've had a car full of white guys run me off of the road. They were coming at my car, and if I had not had my little friend with me, then I don't know what would have happened. But I'm a Marine, and I'm trained to use my gun, and I don't mind firing off on you. So So I don't expect any of you to have the same experiences that I had, but there is, so I'm gonna say this, it's both and either or, right? So with me, yes, I have to be proactive. And if I'm training up any young men, I have a lot of spiritual sons in my life. And if they're black, even with my daughter, there's just certain things you just want to teach your children. I'm not saying you teach them to be fearful, because I don't teach fear in my children. I'm not afraid of cops, never have been, never will be, because, every time, I would say 95% of the times I got pulled over is because I broke the law. I was speeding, I made a wrong turn, did something illegal. So yeah, justifiably so, they pulled me over. But there are other times when I just felt like they just pulled me over. I wouldn't necessarily think they pulled me over because I was black. It's just that a lot of times I got pulled over and they saw my tag, or I got Covenant on my tag, and they said, "Covenant, is that a church?" And I tell them, "Yeah, it's a church." He said, and ran my license plate and all that stuff. And he said, "Well, Pastor, we need more pastors out here. Please pray for me." Gave him my license, and I went on. But there were some who were just arrogant, just had attitude. They woke up wrong. They had piss in their cornflakes that morning. You're going to run into those, but I don't think that has anything to do with you being black or white. You're just going to have somebody that's an evil person, right? But I think what Nate and I are dealing with is the fact that sometimes we do have to be a little bit more proactive with our children. I grew up in the hood, so my dad always gave me the do's and don'ts, right? Here's some things you do. Here's some things you don't do. Coming to you, Tony, bumping your head is different than being dead in the streets. So I understand about learning things by bumping your head and going through experiences. However, you can't learn anything new when you're dead in the streets. So yes, my father did teach us, okay, there are some do's and don'ts about this. If you want to come home, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no sudden movements. I learned that early. Right. But it wasn't like my dad was trying to put fear in me. My dad wanted me to come home. Right. So getting back to Ted's answer, Ted, I'm just like you, brother. I didn't say anything about race with my children. Nothing. And that might seem shocking to people because I'm black, but I didn't talk about race in my house.
I triple that.
The first time I had to bring up anything was when my daughter came home, and she was around 6. And she heard some little boy say the word nigger. That's when I had to address it with her. I had to explain to her what it was. She didn't know what it was. She didn't even know it was a bad term. She just said, "Well, Daddy, what's a nigger?" And first, I was boiling, of course, because I'm like, who said that? Right? Because I thought it was a teacher, and I was getting ready to go drag some people. So, so it was a kid. He was 5 years old. So, of course, what we do as parents, we go to school. We're going to deal with this straight up. And
where did you learn that from?
You know what I'm saying? So my daughter had to see, this is how we deal with this stuff, straight up, face to face. So what I didn't like is, because I was the angry black man, they didn't want me to meet the parents. Right. So they dealt with it. They said they're going to pull him out of the class and all that other stuff. I said, no, there's no need. I said, because you want to allow us to meet these parents, we're pulling her out of this school. So you don't get a check from us, because I decide on where I spend my money. So we put her in another private school. Right. So I didn't. And even after that, after we kind of explained to her it was a bad word, that's not words that we use, we went right on with telling her, look, how precious she was, how beautiful she was. Again, getting back to culture rather than race, getting back to value systems and so forth. These are evil people. He learned that from his mother and father. I said his mother and father probably got an issue with black people, but don't worry about all of that. Just keep it moving. You're going to run into people in the world like that. Right. So, again, I think sometimes if we talk about it all the time, it creates this victim mentality that now every time they leave the house, they gotta, what did Daddy say about this? Should I say hello? Should I shake their hand or should I not? And it like Tony was saying, it creates this anxiety in our children if we continually to talk about race all the time. But unfortunately, you got social media, you got propaganda on the news all day long, every day. And that's what our kids are listening to, and it creates a lot of fear in our children, which our fathers need to really, really watch their children on this kind of stuff and monitor them.
Yeah, I'm after this, I'm gonna go. We got a question, but there's a time when I try to teach my son that the police are here to protect him, and that, because like we were outside the neighborhood playing, and a police officer drove down the neighborhood, and he drove past and he slowed down, and I said, "Hey, how you doing?" I said, "You staying safe?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Caleb, say hi to the police officer." He said, "Hello, sir." And I said, if he tells you to do something, you listen. And then, because Caleb at one point said he wanted to be a police officer. So
Nice.
police officer was like, "Are you doing good?" He said, "Yes, sir." And so, and then the police officer drove off. I was like, "Have a good day." And so I'm not going to, I'm not teaching Caleb, bringing up that stuff proactively, but I'm like you, Pastor, and I'm learning. I'm learning as far. You guys been fathers longer than me, so I'm learning. But especially how John said he does it. He he talks to his daughter, and I'm learning as Caleb experiences things. I talk to him, but we have a question really quick, and the question is: if you don't talk about race, do you think someone else will? Why would you not talk about race, but talk about other things with your children? If we shape our kids' perception, if we shape our kids' perception, why pick and choose what we are silent about and what we speak up about?
I'd love to answer that.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So let me tell you some other things that are real, whether my child was 5 or at 15. Heroin, right? Brothels, butt plugs. You want me to continue? Guys, I'm just saying, there are some topics that are not age appropriate, or my kids just aren't ready for, in my opinion. And as their father, I get to make that decision.
Yes, you do.
You may not agree with it, and that's okay. All right. Thank God we're not living in China. We are forced to raise our kids and do exactly the same thing, or you are locked up. I have had to do what I have felt my convictions, my religious convictions have compelled me to do, my just personal beliefs, things that I was just raised to believe. And that's what I've done. So I don't think I don't think this is one of those clear right or wrong things. Nate, I don't think you're wrong to instigate certain conversations with your son that I have not done with my kids. I think truly that's one of the blessings, the great things about being parents, and the most scary thing about being a parent is you have a pile of mushy clay with your kids. And what they end up being, whether it's a beautiful piece of pottery or something that you just want to chuck in the woods. We've all had those things our kids brought home that they made something out of pottery. You're like, oh, that's so awesome. Yeah. Sure it is. You put it in your drawer and you forget about it for 10 years. But it's in your hands.
It is.
So for me, I know there are lots of things I could teach my kids about race. I could tackle it head on right now. My daughter is 5 years old. But if I do that, she then starts to see the world in a different way. She starts to perceive you, John, a little bit differently than she would have had I not had that conversation. And I don't want that for her. I want her to perceive you, John, for who you are right here and now, not have a preconceived notion that most likely is not going to be true. But I've now tainted her perception just a little. And again, this is my opinion, and I believe it 100%. I just strongly believe there is a time and place to have certain conversations. When my son comes home and says, "Hey, Dad,
I agree.
Have you ever heard of this?" And I'm like, "Oh, dear God, where did you hear that?" And he goes, "Some kid at school's talking about it." Okay, well, guess what? We're going to have that conversation now. Right. But I don't want to plant that seed in his mind otherwise. I want my children to be children as long as they can. Do I want them to be taken advantage of because I've made them be too innocent too long? Of course not. And that's why I say there is a balance. There is a balance. But I don't want to create narratives in their mind that otherwise would not be there.
Agreed. Agreed. And I think I agree to that to an extent of that, because I think we need to understand that in every household it's going to be different. Yeah. Right. The way you parent is going to be different than somebody else parent. I think we have to be careful and not be so dogmatic in our belief that somebody can't parent differently and still be a great parent.
That's right.
And I think we need to have enough respect for one another to know that just because you talk to your 13-year-old about sex and I choose to talk to mine when she was 8. Okay, so what, right? And it's just that it's age appropriate, right? When you talk about certain things. And I don't think anyone is here saying that we don't talk about race. I'm just saying that, when do we? when it comes up, or do we preemptively talk about it? But again, there are so many other things to talk about, like their relationship with God.
Right.
If you're raising girls, when is the appropriate time to talk about sex? Because it's going to be awkward. Let me tell you, the first time I did with my daughter, oh my God, I would rather just go and just cut myself than to have that conversation, because it's just, that's my little girl. And I'm sitting here thinking, oh my God, my little girl one day gonna be sleeping with somebody. You know what I mean? And it's like, but you still have to have those conversations with her, because she needs to know from a man's perspective on how to handle these kinds of things. That's why I started dating. My daughter and I started dating when she was 8 years old. We still date. She's 30 years old. She's not married. We still go out on dates. She knows exactly what she's looking for from a man, because I shaped that in her. And so I was able to have conversations with her because she guided it, right? Sometimes you have to respect your children enough to allow them to guide the conversation, rather than you coming across so strong, and they may not be ready to have that conversation yet. But again, I think as fathers, we need to have that spiritual discernment to know when our children, our sons and our daughters, are ready to have specific conversations, and be okay if parents are raising their children differently.
And could I say one last thing? And I will stop. I promise. I know we're
No.
Now, I know we're running out of time anyways. I just wanted to emphasize one other point, though, because I think, I don't know if it was Mondo that brought this up. And by the way, is it Mondo or Mando? Because I've heard it both ways.
Mondo.
I had it right. Nate was wrong. I just want to point that out. Nate, we called you Mando the whole time.
All right.
So I just wanted to stress this one thing. Jesus did not get into politics. Jesus was not a politician. John, I already know you're way ahead of me, so don't spoil it. But what did Jesus do? He could have gotten into politics. He could have gotten with every politician everywhere he went, and he could have influenced them. He could have changed their perceptions. What did he do? He focused on the hearts of men. That's what he did. That's where this starts, And Mondo, I think you talked about this the best of all, of talking about your neighborhood. You're impacting the hearts of men and women, and that is what we're supposed to do. And let's not lose sight of something. This is a special group here, because not only are we fathers, but we're all believers. And so we have the onus is on us to always keep that in mind. That should come number one. Number one should always be, what does the Bible say? As Christians, as the spiritual leaders, supposed to be the spiritual leaders of our homes, what is the example that we're setting? Are we in tune with what the Bible says? And what Jesus did most of all is, which is the example we're supposed to follow, not politics, not get so worked up over the politics, but Jesus said, I'm going to affect the hearts of men. That's where he spent all of his time focused on.
Amen.
That's good. That's
Awesome.
good. I love it. So last question, guys. This question is for John, and then I want Ted to answer the second part. So John, what's one word of advice you would give? Matter of fact, let's start with Ted, because I know, Pastor John, you got something you want to give us before we leave out. So Ted, answer this question. What's one word of advice you would give to a Black father that he could share with his children or demonstrate to his children as it relates to race?
Oh, my goodness. I would say, number one, watch the movie The Village. It's very good. You guys will enjoy it. Man, I would say, especially in this day and age, I would say, man, I don't want to be too.
Say it, Ted. It's on your. Say it, Ted.
Say it, man.
I would say that again, from a perspective of a Christian, regardless of father, just as a Christian, I would say there is a huge movement right now that I'm seeing from black and white to choose your allegiance to Black Lives Matter. And my answer to that, because I just had this conversation, was, do you even know what they really stand for? Do you really? Have you really researched this for yourself, or are you going by talking points that you've heard on the news? Because if that's what you're going by, I can promise you your perception is incorrect. I would challenge you to search for yourself what it stands for. So I would tell a Black father, I would say, here's where I can stand arm in arm with you all day, Nate, John. I can say that Black lives matter. But do not confuse that with me supporting the movement of Black Lives Matter, because as a Christian, first and foremost, I do not.
I co-sign that.
Okay, so that's what I would say is I think that conversation is not being had enough. And again, if we're being really real, that's a conversation that needs to be had, especially from the perspective of as a Christian.
Okay. And my response to that would be the fact that I think everybody need to do their research, right? And understanding. I know for a fact my Black life matters. And listen, I don't need Ted, Jimmy, Tony, Mondo, or Nate to tell me that my Black life matters, because I already know it matters, right?
Right.
And I definitely don't need a socialist organization to tell me that it does. And so, agreed with that, right? I think we need to do our homework. But I think my perspective would be the fact that to tell a white father how to raise their children is the fact that, listen, understand that you don't owe me anything. Right. I had this conversation with my neighbor, and he was coming over like, man, what can I do? Is there anything that I can do? I just hear so many conversations. I said, well, the first thing that you can do with me is don't come to me like you owe me something. You don't owe me anything. Listen, I'm not a slave. You've never owned slaves, so you don't owe me anything.
Nope.
So I think we need to have the real conversation about this too, Ted, is the fact that, you know what, we need to respect one another for who we are. I am not going to pay for the sins of my father. You're not paying for the sins of your fathers. If we're saved, Jesus eradicated that in Galatians 3:13.
Let's go.
Right? He redeemed us from the curse of the law. Right. So we need to see everything, like you said, from the perspective of being men and women of God, that we love one another. I believe all lives matters, particularly Black lives. I believe when Black lives die in the streets inappropriately, that's wrong. Or a Black life die in the hood just because they were playing in the wrong park that day. That's wrong. So I believe we need to have, if you're going to have the conversation, we can have the full conversation, right? Understanding that there are a lot of people who die in the streets. It's not just Black people. It's just that that's what the news put out there most of the time is that propaganda, right?
Yep.
So I would say I agree with you there with that, and then that was my perspective of what I would share with white fathers. But we're fathers, regardless of color, creed, nationality, ethnicity. We're fathers, and we have a responsibility, right?
Yes.
You have a responsibility to either raise a little racist like yourself, right? Because again, it's taught, it's a learned behavior, or you can be better than that, and you can come above the fray of what everybody's trying to tell you what you need to believe, and tell you what you need to follow, and tell you who to vote for, and all these other things, when we need to step back as fathers and use some discernment. Right. We need to understand, what's important to me and my family, first of all, regardless of political parties. Well, what's important to me and my family? What tax bracket am I in? What's going to help me and my family based on that tax bracket, and what policies are going to be passed? What policies are Christian based? What do we feel about life? I mean, what does God say about life? The sanctity of life. What does God say about marriage? I think there's a lot of things that we can draw the line on as Christians, and we already know what parties support what. I mean, all you got to do is put it up on the internet. All the parties' platforms are right there, and we can plainly see which is where. Then you have to make that decision. It's a personal decision. I can care less who voted for Trump or who's going to vote for Biden Harris. That's not my deal. You can vote for whoever you want. I fought in this country so people can have the freedom to vote. So I'm okay with whoever you vote for, but don't get pissed off at me because I didn't vote for the guy you voted for, right? So that's the issue that I take, is that civility is gone. We can't have a discussion. We can't have a disagreement. We can disagree on being a believer or not. We just can't disagree on politics.
Yeah, I know.
Isn't that funny?
That's so true.
That's a great point.
That's the world we live in, because that's the world that the media has created. And so, and we have to be very careful, guys, even in, I'm sure there'll be people that, keep watching us, that want us to dive in more, and we need to do more of this. Well, that's not necessary, because we're here as Christian men, and we're not here to bash each other. We're just here to have a conversation, right?
Right.
Just to get how we feel. Again, I don't have the answers for the Black community. I don't speak for the Black community. These are purely my opinions, and the way I raise my children is how I raise them. And I can care less who likes it or not. But it is what it is. I'm 54 years old, so I don't need anybody telling me what I need to be doing, right?
Or what matters.
I think I've learned, right? So I think I understand what matters. So I want to end with this scripture. I want to give you guys a scripture that I was praying about, guys. That if that's okay, Nate.
That's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
So it's interesting. I found it in the last book of the Old Testament. Is in the book of Malachi, and I don't know how I missed this text. But as I was praying about tonight and things, this text came to me. It's Malachi chapter 2, verse 10. It says, "Have we not one Father? Have we not one Father?" I mean, when you think about the context of that, have we not one Father? We all came from the same daddy. So why are we treating each other like we don't, right? And so it says, "Have we not one Father? Have not one God created us?" And why do we deal treacherously with one another? By profaning the covenant of the fathers. Now, this was specifically talking about infidelity and things of that nature, but I want to take it from a different perspective. For us, is if we all came from one Father, then why do we treat each other differently? Acts chapter 17 talks about that from one blood, he created all the nations of men. There's no pure race, guys. We all came from God first and foremost. So yeah, the melanin in our skin is different, and we're with different flavors, but we're different flavors of the same Father. And so if we're from the same Father, then we have to understand the fatherhood of God first, so that we can understand the fatherhood that we should be walking in. Right? We should treat and do things just like our Father does for us, so that people can see us through the eyes of our Christian faith, rather than seeing us being a Black man or white man or Hispanic man, but just being a Christian person that happens to be Black, or a Christian person that happens to be white. But all the filter that we use is the filter of our walk with Jesus and understanding that. So I just wanted to just give you guys that text, because it really blessed me when I saw that. And I'm going to be using this a lot more, as a matter of fact.
That's great, John. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Well, guys, I thank you guys for everything tonight. I'm sure the audience enjoyed it. Ted, thank you for stirring up the pot. I appreciate it. Tony too. But guys, I firmly believe if we all came up here and we thought and had the same opinions and believed the exact same thing and felt the exact same way, then this would not be an impactful conversation. And that's what we have when John and I talked about this. He's one of my mentors, so I go to him and ask him advice on things. And we talked before I did this, and I asked him what's the best way to do this, and he said you got to be able to have a civil discourse. He said you got to be able to have a conversation, and that's why we're doing this. We're having a conversation. That's why I prayed and I wanted fathers of different races, different backgrounds, different opinions, and because guess what? With all of our different opinions on here, it came all the way back to one point: Jesus. It came back to we all met somewhere in the middle where something Ted said when he stirred the pot. We said, okay, yep, I understand. Yep, I understand. And Tony, yep, Jimmy, Mondo. we got it. And so I love it. And so for those of you who have been watching, we thank you. We thank you for the support. I thank you guys for supporting us. We're going to do more of this. You're going to see more of these guys with me. We're going to do, I'm going to have them on as many times as possible as they can be. But we're going to dive into this fatherhood thing going down the line. We're going to talk about different topics. We're going to help you. If you're a father and you need some advice, you can email us. Email us at hello@kingdomrelationships.org. These guys are on Facebook. They're on Instagram. If you find them, I'm sure you can message them and ask them questions. Guys, we thank you for joining us tonight. We will be back. Coming back. Won't be back until the first of the year First quarter got some big things for you guys. So be prepared and just be ready for what we got coming for you first quarter. Okay, for those you're watching, thank you. I can't leave without saying this. I did it before, and I feel it'd be remiss if I did. If you don't know Jesus as your Lord and Savior, you can accept him right now. And you do that by saying, repeating these words after me. Say, Lord Jesus, I am a sinner. Forgive me for my sins. Come into my life, save me, and take this walk with me. In Jesus' name, amen. If you said that, then you are saved, you're in the family, and you are able to understand and relate to us as believers. And if you did that, just email me at hello@kingdomrelationships.org. And I want to give you some materials and help you walk through this journey. All right. For all you guys that's watching, thank you and be blessed.